Hello everyone, I'm Marina Ridic. In this episode, we will explore the impact of COVID-19 on inclusive society and leadership globally. Let's meet our speakers. So thank you very much for joining me. And we are in the midst of global pandemic. Cameron, what concerns you most about how the world is changing?
The concerns are, I would say, that the approach of every country is so much different. And first of all, of course, the concerns are for all those people who are alone today, who had some people who died and they're really, really close to them. So first of all, of course, the concerns are there, and my heart is, of course, with them. But if you look to transatlantic relations, that's also what we're talking about. I would say that the most important concern is that every country, especially in Europe, where I'm living, in Amsterdam, in the Netherlands, we have a different approach than our neighbors, Germany, than our neighbors, Belgium. That was the first thing to do. Okay, we need a lockdown, or we need something. We have to do something. But now we are there, that we can go to the next phase, the next step. And if all those approaches are different, it will be very hard to work together. And that's really one of my concerns. Like for example, when we say from the Netherlands, okay, we are going to relaunch that you can fly, from Amsterdam to somewhere else in Europe. But if France is saying no, you can't enter our country. How can we work together? I would say, all those decades of European relations, it's just suddenly it was away.
So let's move from European perspective to US perspective. Elandria, would you briefly elaborate what it means being minority in the crisis, despite living in democratic society in very rich countries such as the US?
Definitely. I think one of the most appalling and shocking things to see with the impact that COVID-19 has had in the United States has been the disproportionate death toll when we look at Black and Brown communities throughout the country. And Cameron's point earlier, I think it's also so concerning because in this moment when we really need connection and cooperation, we're actually seeing the United States take a completely different path in terms of addressing the problem and really failing to work with our European allies, which is really kind of saddening to think about for the future and for the necessary recovery, because how will we address what has come to light in terms of the disproportionate impact that these poor communities are facing? How are we going to address access to health care going forward? How are we going to address worker protection in so many ways? I can always add more, but.
We always mention this access to health, access to justice, or solidarity and cooperation during this crisis. But President Trump called this Chinese virus. So Sissi, what do you think? Is that a new ground for division, for polarization in the US society?
So, my mother always says crisis shows you someone's character. And I think what we're seeing right now is the real character of the US. I'm not going to villainize all the people. I'm one of the people who happen to live in the US and say this is our character. But when I think about the history, the origin, and how the US was created, how we have gone about naming, protecting people, and experiencing this pandemic is aligned with who we are as a country. And what I mean by that is xenophobia and racism is the core of, how the US was founded and how the US operates. So it's no surprise that the current president named it the Chinese virus, which is racist and is xenophobic. That is not okay, right? But that isn't something that is new. That is unfortunately, a part of our DNA. And as I think about the outcomes, similar to your first question of what I'm really thinking about and grappling with, is I think this pandemic has held up a mirror to us, and it's made both privilege and oppression extremely salient and visible. So it is allowing, us as the US, but also the world, to really take a look at some of our systems to realize that the systems, whether it be democracy, whether it be our healthcare, whether it be our, small businesses, whether it be our government, they're actually extremely fragile, and they're only as strong as the people. So I think this is a great opportunity for us as the US, but also other countries, to think about how can we use this moment to prioritize our people to get us to the countries in the world that we dream of, so that we're not, labeling things in racist terms like, Asian virus and Chinese virus and all this other wild stuff. More so as a global opportunity for us to support each other.
When we talk about that, such important thing for all of us, especially during crisis, to support each other, we are pleased to have Jelena. You are professor, which research has focused on the performance of minority representation. And Jelena is an expert for political representation and ethnic politics and civil society. In that sense, what is your opinion about challenges that leaders face globally?
Well, there are many challenges. One of those is, I think, a slide towards authoritarianism. We've been witnessing the decline of democracy, which is really worrying. And the state of emergency and the measures that are being introduced due to pandemic, many countries are using to enforce measures that really suspend rights, control information and stuff that are not necessary. So for instance, I'm coming from Belgrade, from Serbia, where the state of emergency has been used to actually prevent oppositional voices, to prevent open information, to arrest journalists, to strictly control media, etc. So I think these are the issues that we are seeing not only in Serbia, but also Hungary, Turkey, many other countries. And seeing also how repressive measures that China, for instance, introduced are being praised in some parts of Europe or the US are things that worry me. At the same time, we talk about minorities. Most of the racial or ethnic minorities are really discriminated against. They are those who are suffering the most in terms of, numbers of dying, people who are dying. There are more of them from ethnic minority groups than you see white people, for instance, but also access to healthcare. They're not cared in the same way as those who come from the majority population. Another group that I think is in danger as well are Roma. So for instance, in Serbia, there are many Roma settlements, more than 500 Roma settlements, where more than 25,000 Roma people have no access to water, which means they can't protect themselves to increase hygiene, for instance. So these kinds of things are really worrying. And another group also are migrants who cannot physically distance in the same way as some of us can, being locked in a safe space in your own home with your family is something that many of us can be grateful for. While when you take a look at the migrants or some of the minority groups who live in smaller apartments or work in those area, have those jobs where they're more disposed to being infected, is something that really worries me.
So Jelena mentioned restrictive rules, and many countries are implementing digital surveillance mechanism. Anna's explanation is to prevent the virus from spreading. But what do you think? How can this mechanism be controlled?
I think this is an important question on how to try to control this pandemic. As I come from Italy, and in Italy we were the first country facing this COVID-19 virus. So we started implementing different surveillance and citizen empowerment, starting from drones and using drones in many cities to try to understand and to try to control people and preventing people from exiting and having a walk. And I think this was one of the things that technology helped to try to prevent, like people going out and having like meetings and gathering outside. For this thing, we had some issues with privacy policy, as many of those data were not under the GDPR, and we had to face this. And I think that many cities had to try to understand if their values and the democracy values instead were partially were connected, I would say, with this surveillance, and if this surveillance was really a good surveillance or would go to a totalitarian system. So we had different voices in this case, but at the moment we are entering the second phase of the COVID-19 virus in Italy. So we now have the possibility to escape and to meet people and to have a gathering, but just for the families. So finally the families can meet again, but still we're not allowed to meet between regions. And this is the point of position about the surveillance system.
Regarding our democratic values, Joseph, could this crisis be a turning point for a European society? What is your prediction? In what way we will go now?
Well, I think, and you cannot, I mean, don't catch me on it, but from my perspective, it seems like this crisis can either make it. There are European countries that are holding up orders for masks or alcohol, alcohol, or these kind of necessities that are necessary everywhere. And then you might ask yourself, where is the solidarity Europe was based on? And where are these values? And I see there are also more talks about the European Union as one entity, where they want to have medical reserves, where they want to be prepared for future crises. And so I keep, from how I see it, it's either gonna make it or break it. I mean, it's really crude saying it in that way, but that's just as well as many other challenges which we are facing not only in Europe, also elsewhere. How is the society going to be after the crisis? How are we going to recuperate the economy? How are people going to start working? Because there are going to be many jobs lost. There are also going to be industries lost. People are going to have to innovate and find new ways to work, basically. So I'm really looking at it with two pair of glasses, one of worried and one I'm afraid for the consequences, both short term and long term. But I guess it's waiting to see how we're gonna be with the first wave of the virus being behind us and having an actual vaccine for the virus, which is right now, I think, the most important part.
So media reported just about refugees, about immigration crisis before COVID-19. And Cameron, back to you, due to immigration crisis, we know that thousands of people across Europe have found themselves in the process of getting documents, getting official status. So do we know what is their position right now? Maybe from Netherlands perspective, you can speak. Do they have any access to information, any kind of benefits, healthcare, government support?
To be very honest, I really don't know. We don't know. Because that's exactly, I think, the point I tried to make earlier, and some others underline it. I would say it's every country is looking to him or herself. So there are boundaries again, and the only thing that we are focusing on to look to migrants is, there are no migrants coming anymore to the Netherlands. That number is dropping right now. The migrants' places are getting empty and empty. Instead of looking what's happening over there. I think the news that we are reporting is, of course, also about how the Netherlands is trying to help Greece to have the people, the migrants over there in the region. But focus right now is on other issues, and I would say I mean that's an important point, and you know, maybe it's a strange thing to say right now while so many people are dying every day and so many people are infected every day. But I don't think that the virus is our biggest enemy today. I think that undemocratic governments, repressive governments, those are the biggest enemies right now for us. I think Jelena gave us some wonderful examples, and actually not wonderful because it's, you know, it makes me really sad. The governments who are using the COVID-19 to come up with new policies, to have all the power at one person, or you know, the opposition can't talk anymore till the end of the crisis. I think that's our bigger enemy right now than the COVID-19. And focus, just to say something on migration again. All those governments, if you look to what those governments will do, yeah, then there will be some hard times for migration policy, especially for migrants who are right now really in between their old home and their new home. And I really don't know what will happen with them on a short notice.
Let me wrap up our today's session with the last question for all of you. We heard a lot of different stories, but probably we also have learned many important lessons as leaders who promotes inclusivity, diversity, equality. So maybe we could start from Jelena. What is the most important lessons, or let's say your idea you would like to share for the end of this discussion?
I want to mention something we haven't really talked about, and these are the local solidarities. We've been witnessing people helping each other a lot. While many governments failed in the way they approach the citizens, we've seen people actually bonding while physically distancing, volunteering to help elderly, to help those vulnerable. Many of the civil society organizations helping homeless people, for instance. We've seen teachers organizing in an amazing way to continue education. We've seen medical staff working for 24-hour shifts to provide healthcare. And I think these are things that can make us more hopeful in terms of future, you know, that we may orient more towards solidarity. If we don't have it on a global or national or, you know, political level, at least we can have faith in people who show that they are capable of being compassionate and open towards each other and supportive. And this is something that we should all strive for as citizens, as countries, and as the global community.
Yes, citizen empowerment is such an important thing right now, and hopefully it will become more and more important during next years. So, Hannes, we are coming to you. You mentioned being locked down for 2 months, probably closed many opportunities, but also hopefully open some for you.
Yes, for me and for all other youth here in Italy and all around the world, I think that being able to be connected, at least who has the possibility to be connected, was a blessing for us, because we had the opportunity to follow courses and to keep in touch with professors, and also to organize meetings and webinars online. I want to underline this. We had a lot of meetings going on, and we were organizing a workshop in the Italian Parliament. But then after the lockdown started, we decided to forward it and to organize everything online. So we had the opportunity to reconnect and to stay all on the same page, and to organize these meetings online with our professionals. And I think this is important for us it was a very important moment for us to understand how we can be helpful also in our local neighborhood, as we students normally are struggling to be present in the local level, and maybe we are more like in university or in our works. So this gave us the possibility to reconnect and to stay in touch with our local base. And as Yelena said, in Italy we had a very beautiful and very good working solidarity between neighborhoods, and we had the opportunity to sing and all together and to stay all together, even social distancing, and this was very good opportunity, and I think this we will remember forever, and we will tell for sure this story to our grandsons and to our childrens.
Okay, we are heading to Elandre. What is your lessons, or what you are hoping to have as a best gift after this pandemic?
Especially in this moment, as the United States is still very much in the midst of struggling with this pandemic, I think the biggest hope and opportunity for the future, I think, lies in really thinking about an inclusive recovery and what that means looking forward. So I think right now it's really about seizing all of the various opportunities that this crisis has presented us in terms of really being able to think what we want next and how we want to come back to work, how we want to come back together as people, and really think about in this momentous election year what we really want our society to look like after this. And so on that note, it really is about making sure that we recover from this both economically, politically, socially, and health-wise as inclusively as possible, so that we're actually righting the different injustices and disparities that we've seen for so long that this virus has really brought to the forefront.
Yeah, what is next? That is really important and huge question, and probably we could discuss another time about possibilities to thrive and to make better world after Corona is done across the globe. So, Joseph, your final thoughts, and then I have one special question for Cici.
Oh.
Cici always gets a special question. So basically, yeah, just like the others have said before me, the things that you cherish so much are also the things you want to remember and keep on remembering. For instance, like you see these amazing balcony concerts every neighborhood has, even those amazing ones you see in Italy and in Paris, all over. Literally, it melts my heart to see these kind of initiatives where you see musicians come to their balconies to play with each other, play songs and symphonies and everything, and also neighbors which before that have never really been in contact with each other. We see now literally there's an entire neighborhood social contact group where everyone is offering their help, whether it's baking cakes for someone that is working or whether it's helping with groceries. The solidarity and the need for one another is what sticks by the most. And I really hope that it does keep on going even after the pandemic and after we have gone through all of that, and to see how inclusive and show how inclusive we really are with one another, not just by ethnicity or whatever, also just by different age groups or different people from different areas, just to see all kind of diversity, the beauty of it, and more importantly, the strength and need for it. Because let's face it, we do need diversity, and that's one of our strongholds in today's society.
So I know that Sisi is really passionate about women's rights and female approach and voices and empowerment. So that will be next topic. And I would like to hear from you, Sisi, very briefly, your thoughts on female voices and female leadership during this pandemic. Do we have good examples?
I mean, you know, I think she's the president of Iceland, I want to say. There's just, so let me bring it back to the US. So there are women mayors who have been holding it down to make sure that the populations that they serve are not putting themselves in harm's way. So I'll use Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms in Atlanta, Georgia. She wrote a very long and in-depth article for the New York Times, went on CNN to oppose what the governor was saying in Georgia. And what was really powerful about what she was saying was, you know, she wasn't villainizing him, in my personal opinion, though there's lots of things that you could do to villainize him. She was saying she thought it was the wrong decision. And she was very clear to her constituents that, yes, the governor has said, you know, that the state is reopened, but here in Atlanta, we are not reopening, and here's why. And she, you know, every day on her social media is screenshotting the amount of folks that are infected, screenshotting the amount of folks that are dying, and also pointing back to the federal regulations explaining in order for folks to move phases, the North Star is supposed to be 2 weeks of continuous decline in cases. So she's a great example of women who are, you know, going out on a limb. It's not always sexy or nice or comfortable to oppose your governor, to say, hey, we're not going to do this in our city. Thinking about the mayor of New Orleans, thinking about the mayor of San Francisco. For those of you all who don't know, New Orleans was the second. So New York was the first, the highest case. Then New Orleans came right after. And a lot of that has to do with poverty, lack of infrastructure, et cetera, that we mentioned before. But she's another great example. She's like, listen, here in this city, we care about our people. And because we care about you, we need you to stay home. So what I hope that the world is seeing, that women and femme leaders are amazing. They're dope. But what's more important, and it's something that we've talked about in TILN, is there are things that have been socialized in us, or, you know, given positive reinforcement that allows us to lead from a place of empathy, from a place of community, rather than just a bottom line. And I'm not trying to say that all men, you know, lack empathy and all men only think about the bottom line. But to my other friend on the call who's from the US, this is a call for leadership. And the examples, the salient examples that we've seen of true leadership, especially in this country, has been women. And I think what we should take from this, and I'm gonna take some of the last question because I thought it was so good, is this is a time for us to really take time and take inventory on what's working and what's not. And if we see that a certain leadership is not working, I think we should do something about it. And if we see that a certain leadership is working, we should do something about it. And I think now is the time, similar to what I said earlier, is that it's making both power and oppression very salient. This is also the time where people who are in power try to obtain more power, and people who don't have power will be left with less power. So it's really important for us as individuals to really be thinking about what are we going to put our power behind, and making sure that what we're going to put our power behind, we see that it's working, and not just, you know, keeping it the same because it's always been that way. So women are the way, obviously.
Yeah.
But I'm really excited that they're getting some shine.
Thank you so much for your time, for your energy, for your thoughts. And I hope this kind of chat will also empower inclusive leaders across the globe to be visible, to be heard, and somehow to find a way to handle with many struggles, with many issues in the post-corona world.